Howdy, howdy. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Michael Jackson and why I think he was innocent in the whole 1993 child molestation case, and why I think they framed him. I mean, okay, so recently I watched that interview that came out in maybe I want to say the year 2000 or 2001. Um, the very famous 2 hour long expose with Michael Jackson. I think it was done by the BBC or something like that. It was the dude that interviewed him was British, like an Indian Brit, so it was probably the BBC. But anyway, in this interview, it's very obvious that the journalist or whatever you want to call this guy was trying to set him up with some of his questions and the way that he was asking. He was looking for information that really has no. There's no evidence of any of this information outside of the tabloids. He was looking for evidence of his plastic surgery to his face lifts and whatever. He wanted to know about the plastic surgery Michael Jackson had gotten, and he wanted to know why Michael Jackson thought it was okay to let children sleep in his bed. And while I would never let my child or any child that I was responsible for, or really just I would never allow that to happen. I would never allow just some kid to sleep in a strange man's bed. If I were in not in my presence, it's not going to happen. However, I don't think that Michael Jackson was capable of hurting children or hurting really anyone at all. I mean, the man was so gentle, and I just see, honestly, when I look at Michael Jackson and I listen to what he's talking about, I see a lot of myself in him. It's very strange because he seems very guarded but open at the same time. You know, he's not gonna lie. He's telling the truth, but he seems guarded about certain details of his past, about how he was abused as a child, and he just didn't particularly want to talk about that stuff, and no one wants to talk about that kind of stuff. So I think I think that I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I can spot a liar pretty easily. Uh, I haven't like taken classes or anything like that, but I'm pretty good at spotting a liar. I'm pretty good at spotting when someone is lying, and I just don't see it in Michael Jackson. He seems very, even when he seems nervous. Like there's a point that this whole interview was during the time when he dangled blanket over the balcony in Berlin or whatever, and they that part of the interview was after that, and he had blanket and he was feeding him, and his legs were shaking, and he was so he was so nervous, he was shaking, and you just feel terrible for the man because people already have these preconceived notions of him being sexually abusive towards children, and I guess perverted. People think of Michael Jackson as being perverted, but I mean, I feel like people set him up to seem that way. I mean, if the man lived for 50 years, and for 45 of those years, he was on a stage, literally. For 45 out of 50 years of his life, he was an entertainer and constantly very involved in the entertainment business, very popular, on high in the charts during, his whole life, and sold out shows every tour, every show, every tour. And that type of pressure, I'm not making excuses for him, but I'm trying to explain how his personality and how his eccentric personality could have formed. He didn't have a childhood, so I think he he sought to make himself a childhood, or I don't think that he ever really was able to grow up because he never felt like he finished his childhood. And you know, I think that I think that if he were that type of pervert, I think that we would have heard more by now because the man was constantly around children. I mean, his music videos, there were kids, um, like tons of fans all the time that were children, of course. And he had friends that were children. You know, in the interview, this 12-year-old boy that survived cancer is talking about how, you know, Michael Jackson and him are great friends, and I just don't. When I watch that interview, I don't see a sexually confusing type of relationship or any confusion whatsoever. It seems like complete symbiosis. You know, they seem like they completely get along. They're holding hands in part of the video, which is weird. It's fucking weird. You know what I mean? And it makes him seem like he's a weirdo, but I don't think he is, man. I just don't think he's doing that shit. I don't think that, you know, 12-year-old kids would be crying telling you about how Michael Jackson saved their lives if he was fucking butt fucking them or some shit. You know what I'm saying? It's not happening. Michael Jackson is innocent. And, you know, for all these, you know, South Park episodes and bullshit, it's just bullshit. And really, it is ignorant. It's ignorant. That's all I have to say.